voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
It is State of the Union Day in Washington as President Trump heads to Capitol Hill. Congressman Ro Khanna has lost the thread on Epstein. We have troubling new details of what he's planning next, and it will happen tonight. More bad news for Gavin Newsom. Latest polling not good for the California governor as he manages the fallout from a disastrous appearance in Georgia. It is Tuesday, February 24th. This is Common Sense for the American people. I'm Scott Jennings reporting to you live from Saginaw, Michigan, dispatched here for CNN's coverage of the State of the Union speech tonight. My colleague Van Jones and I will watch the speech with a group of voters here in Saginaw, and we'll talk about those conversations on both CNN's terrestrial stream this evening and also their digital service. We hope you tune in for that. The White House is previewing a Trump speech tonight, heavy on the economy and on celebrating the nation's 250th anniversary. The president is expected to talk about the deep problems that he found upon regaining the White House, and he will highlight everyday Americans who have benefited from his policies. The speech begins at 9 o'clock Eastern. The men's USA hockey team, the gold medalists, will be in attendance, we are told. And this just into the show, Erica Kirk, the widow of Charlie Kirk, will attend the speech tonight as a guest of President Trump. Many Democrats are planning to boycott the speech, a few dozen planning to attend something called the People's State of the Union. Looks to be the most radical, progressive members of Congress who just can't bring themselves to sit in the same room as Donald Trump and their colleagues. And then there's the curious case of California Congressman Ro Khanna. You've probably seen him on TV, one of the people who has agitated most often for the release of the Epstein files and making some wild and erroneous claims along the way. Well, he is bringing to the speech tonight someone connected to the Epstein files story. Let's hear from Ro Khanna about that person in Cut 12.
Haley Robeson just wants justice. That's why I'm inviting her as my guest tomorrow at the State of the Union. She'll be speaking not just for herself, but for the thousands of survivors.
You heard the name there, Haley Robeson. Now, Ro Khanna says she is speaking for the survivors. But is she? The files show something completely different, that Haley Robeson was, in fact, someone who worked with Jeffrey Epstein to recruit young women to the island. According to CNN's reporting, and I'm just going to read it to you, quote, Robeson told police she remembered bringing 6 girls to Epstein and told authorities she was like a Heidi Fleiss, the Hollywood madam who ran a high-class prostitution ring. Robeson provided police with the names of some of the girls she had brought to Epstein's house. She gave the officers the cell phone numbers for 4 of them and told police she wanted to assist the investigation in hopes of receiving lesser charges for herself. Here's more from CBS News. I'll just read it to you, and I quote, Haley Robeson received $200 payments each time she escorted a new masseuse to Epstein's home, according to the police reports. Robeson targeted girls from the rural area outside Palm Beach, where she grew up, because Epstein believed they were less likely to complain to authorities. Here again, Robeson likened herself to the so-called Hollywood madam Heidi Fleiss in an interview with Palm Beach police. And Epstein, she said, once admonished her for bringing a 23-year-old recruit to his home because she was told, the younger, the better. So of all the possible people that Congressman Ro Khanna could bring to the speech tonight to highlight the Epstein issue, this is who he chooses. This latest Epstein fiasco with Ro Khanna comes after he outed 4 innocent men on the House floor by name, whose names appeared in some files, but who had, it turns out, done nothing wrong. He claimed they were perpetrators, and in fact, they were just random people. Seems like Ro Khanna has lost the plot here when it comes to Epstein. Seems that in his fervor to smear President Trump, he's actually doing a great disservice to the truth on an important story. Other news today, Idaho, another case of a radicalized anti-ICE political vigilante 43-year-old woman stole an ambulance and tried to use it to commit arson against an office building where the Department of Homeland Security was leasing space. Local TV picks up the coverage here in Cut 13.
Police identified the suspect as 43-year-old Sarah Elizabeth George of Boise. Police say they arrested George just before 5 o'clock today outside her home in Boise. Investigators say they spent the last 5 days canvassing, reviewing surveillance footage, and using technological analysis to identify George. As we previously reported, last Wednesday, an ambulance was parked in the ambulance bay outside St. Luke's Hospital in Meridian while a crew transported a patient inside. When Canyon County paramedics returned, their vehicle was gone. Police say George drove the ambulance into the Portico North building near the hospital. Investigators believe George intended to set the building on fire, but ran away when first responders arrived. This incident happened in the same building where the Department of Homeland Security recently leased space.
43-year-old, white female, Boise, Idaho, another radicalized political vigilante, whipped into a frenzy by the Democratic Party and their media cheerleaders, and another life is ruined. More fallout for Gavin Newsom today on his tour. You might recall that yesterday he told a group of voters in Georgia that he was dyslexic and therefore incapable of reading a speech. Well, internet sleuths picked up the case and found this video of Newsom from a few weeks ago on a podcast. Listen to him in Cut 5.
You've written a hell of a book, and I don't say that lightly. I went through it in a quick hour and a half, almost 2 hours.
Gavin Newsom seems to be one of those politicians whose message is audience dependent as he furiously pushes back on allegations of racism from his remarks in Georgia, where he appeared to dumb himself down for black voters who were in the audience. CNN's data reporter Harry Enton reports that Newsom is floundering a bit in his run for the White House. Let's pick up Harry in Cut 14.
Chance Newsom is the 2028 Democratic nominee. 3 months ago, according to the cash prediction market, look at that, it was a 37% chance. Now, it's just a 28%. Down he goes. He's definitely flailing a little bit. And I will note, John, that it also seems to me people are a little less interested in Gavin Newsom than they used to be. Look at this. Google searches for Gavin Newsom down 63% from the August peak. You remember back then it was when he started that social media, right, going after President Trump. There was a lot of interest from Democratic voters, but maybe that interest is waning off just a little bit.
Back in California, Newsom is under fire for a controversial pardon that he has granted. Clemency for an illegal alien who was convicted of numerous charges, including attempted murder, assault with a semi-automatic firearm, assault with a firearm, and conspiracy to commit assault with a firearm. A judge sentenced him in 1997 to 14 years to life in prison. But this clemency from Newsom opens the possibility for this alien to use the immigration process to stay in our country. Newsom is also under intense criticism from law enforcement in Sacramento for a parole program that has let a child molester facing multiple life sentences out of jail. Listen to the Sacramento sheriff here in Cut number 4.
He was given 3 consecutive terms, 20-year terms. He should have been in prison the rest of his life. Unfortunately, in 2020, a bill was passed that made folks eligible for parole as early as 50 years of age once they serve 20 years. So he qualifies. He's 64 years old. I'm 62. That is dead wrong. These children, he ruined their lives. And now he's eligible. And the damage he's done, he stole their childhoods. And my issue is the parole board. I read the reports. They're horrific. You've seen some of the things he did. There's no explanation. You can't explain it away. There are some folks that deserve a second chance in life. Someone that does these type of things, they don't deserve a second chance in life. What are we coming to as a society here in California? That it's okay with this, to let him out. You think about some of the offenders that do the child abuse cases, child molest cases. Typically, they're older males. Now we're seeing a lot of folks in their 20s and 30s.
The offender's name here is David Allen Funston. Should not be out of jail, but in Gavin Newsom's California, he in fact is. Some news about aches and pains today. A listener note from Eileen in Kentucky. Eileen, 87 years old. She says there was a point where walking had become really difficult. She thought perhaps this is just what happens when you get old, but she then tried Relief Factor. Now Eileen walking, dancing. She started off taking 3 packets a day. Now she's down to 2. She says Relief Factor made all the difference. It could also make a difference for you. If you've tried other options and nothing is working, Relief Factor is worth a look. Try the 3-week quick start. Call 1-800-4RELIEF or go to relieffactor.com. Ask yourself, how will it feel to be out of pain? Maybe we'll get the answers with Relief Factor. More to come on the Scott Jennings Show. When we come back, Brent Gardner from Americans for Prosperity is here. We'll discuss the President's State of the Union. It's common sense for the American people. Stay with us.
Scott, listen, when I prep for my CNN debates, I need to know exactly where the national conversation is headed. And it turns out it's helpful to know that in your everyday life as well. And that's why I tried out Free Spoke. Now, it's my go-to place for search and for news. When you use Free Spoke, it's a search platform that gives you the full story. You get information from the left, you get it from the right, you get non-mainstream, you get independent journalists, you get podcast insights. What you get from Free Spoke is the full story all in one place. And here's the thing, when you search on Free Spoke, you know they are not going to sell your data. It's quite something, actually. It's fast, it's private, it's unbiased. Free Spoke helps me research topics and make sure that I understand the full picture. You can have this tool as well. Just go to freespoke.com/Jennings to download their app for free. And as an exclusive for my listeners, use promo code Jennings after you download it and get 35% off the premium version. You go ad-free and you unlock deeper elite tools to have control over your information. So don't rely on incomplete information. Take control of your own information environment. See every perspective so you can think for yourself, just like I do before every debate.
Conversations and stories you simply won't hear from the mainstream media. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
Common sense for the American people, broadcasting on location today, Saginaw, Michigan. I'm here for coverage of the President's State of the Union speech tonight. Here with my CNN colleagues, including Van Jones. Van and I will be part of CNN's live coverage of the speech this evening and also on CNN's live streaming app. We're going to be talking to voters here in Saginaw about what they hear from the president and get their reaction. And the president is due to speak tonight around 9 o'clock. Conservatives are keeping their eye on what the president's priorities will be for the next year or so. Will he look to cut more red tape? Will he try to do health care reform? One of the groups always working on issues like this, important things at the federal and state level. Americans for Prosperity, they're our friends here at the show. And joining us now, Brent Gardner is the Chief Government Affairs Officer and Senior Vice President at Americans for Prosperity, AFP, we call them. Brent, never a dull moment. We have the State of the Union coming up tonight. What's your expectation and hopes for President Trump's remarks?
Big night, Scott. Yeah, I'm hopeful that we're going to hear from a president who's excited for the progress that we've made and who's ready to lay out a bold agenda for where he knows we need to go from here. And I think he's got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, I expect the president, Brent, to go heavy on a couple of vectors on the economy. One would be to talk about the mess that he inherited, frankly. And the other is to talk about, in a macro way, first, the good markers that have come out over the last year, getting things back on track, but also then in a micro way, highlight the stories of people who have directly benefited from his policies. If he does that, is that what you're hoping the kind of communication strategy will be tonight for the White House?
Yeah, I think so, Scott. I think ultimately, even though we have made good progress, no one can dig out of the policies the last 4 years and really decades of growing government in just 1 year. And for today, millions of Americans still find the American dream harder to reach than they did a generation ago. So I think he's going to talk about energy abundance. I think he's going to talk about lowering energy costs. I think he's going to talk about more affordable housing, lowering health care costs and putting patients first, not insurers, lowering grocery prices, and then, ultimately finding ways to ensure that we restrict both the size and scope of government. I think he's made some really great strides there, and it's the kind of thing we know we're going to need to continue to do if we're going to turn things around here in this country.
Yeah, the federal government, smallest size since 1966, which, Brent, every Republican I ever worked for in my entire career said they were going to shrink government, and Trump's the first person to do it. I hope he makes a deal out of that. We're also expecting the president tonight to talk about America's 250th anniversary. Now, Americans for Prosperity, you all have a lot going on around America 250. Tell us a little bit about what AFP has going in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a project we call One Small Step. And as I mentioned, for many Americans, the American dream feels out of reach. Taking one small step is an opportunity to reclaim that. It's rooting in today's conversations and founding principles while elevating today's voices to show that freedom still works. Highlighting places where the founders helped get us here and the people who along the way have helped build this country into what it is and make the American dream something worthy of actually searching for. So we've got stuff across the country that we're going to be doing. We're encouraging Americans to take that one small step for themselves and to share their story to help shape the next chapter of the American dream. And we've got a great website that people can go to on that, Scott, www.a250toolkit.com. So we're going to be holding events across the country. We're going to be highlighting people who are helping to live their American dream and hoping to see that American dream live even stronger as we move into the future.
Now, Brent, the Democrat response is going to be given by the new governor of Virginia, Abigail Spanberger. She's off to a rather inauspicious start, in my opinion. Someone who was positioned as a moderate has really signed a lot of radical legislation and pushed a lot of radical ideas in Virginia. How do you see the split screen between President Trump and Spanberger tonight?
Well, I'm trying to recognize her because if I remember correctly, Governor Spanberger ran as a moderate who ultimately wasn't going to be a big departure for folks in Virginia. That's how she convinced them to get on board. And as a Virginia native, I certainly can tell you that the legislation we've seen coming through that she apparently supports is the kind of thing of nightmares for most Americans. And they're trying to figure out what happened. So I'll be interested to see how she reacts to the policies being pursued by the president. And ultimately, I'm wondering how much more disconnected she can get and where that party is actually going to be by the time we get to November.
Yeah, it's an interesting juxtaposition when they're governing versus when they're campaigning. I think a lot of people in Virginia are quite surprised based on what they had been told versus the results they're getting. Brent Gardner from Americans for Prosperity, thanks for joining us on the show. We'll be watching the speech, and we'll look forward to your reaction afterwards. We're going to take a break. More speech preview, this time from Congressman Ben Cline, also of Virginia. We'll get his thoughts on Spanberger as well. It's Common Sense for the American People. Scott Jennings broadcasting from Saginaw, Michigan. Stay with us.
He's the author of the best-selling book, A Revolution of Common Sense. Here's Scott Jennings.
Tuesday, February 24th. We await this evening President Trump giving the State of the Union at the Capitol in Washington, D.C. One of the people who will be in the room for the speech joins us now, Congressman Ben Cline, representing Virginia's 6th Congressional District, is here. Congressman Cline, welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
Scott, great to be with you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us here a few hours before the president takes to the rostrum this evening. Let's talk Virginia politics first, though. We've been tracking the story of the Democrats in Virginia trying to redistrict the state into a 10 Democrat, 1 Republican delegation. There was litigation about this, and I believe a judge has put a stop to it for now. I know you're involved in the case, Congressman Cline. Give us an update on the status of this gerrymandering going on in Virginia.
Sure. So Democrats in Virginia, they abused the Constitution, broke the laws of the Commonwealth in putting together this gerrymander scheme. Abigail Spanberger, elected governor, campaigned against gerrymandering, then flipped and said she's all about it. It's just one of the many instances where she misled the people of Virginia as she ran for office. And now we are in court because the law is the law, and we respect the rule of law on this side of the aisle. And the Democrats are trying to muscle through this referendum in April. But a judge in Tazewell County has put a hold on that because of the violations. Hopefully the Supreme Court will uphold that stay, and this will not be in effect this year.
Is that the next stop here, Congressman? We have to get the Virginia Supreme Court, their ruling. I assume it would have to come relatively soon, right?
They have had cases earlier. The judge from Tazewell ruled in our favor. The Supreme Court pushed hearings on the case till 2 days after the referendum. We think that was an effort to hopefully avoid having to look at the case. Now the case that we've put to them this time has to do with questioning on the ballot, the fairness. What Democrats are asking is whether or not voters should restore fairness, quote unquote, to the redistricting process. And that's a slanted question which goes against our Constitution. So we've asked the Supreme Court to step in, and hopefully they'll hear it before the referendum on the 21st.
All right, we'll keep an eye on the Virginia redistricting situation. Let's talk State of the Union. What are you expecting to hear from the president tonight? What do you want to hear from the president tonight as he addresses the nation?
Well, the president is going to talk about the great turnaround that we've seen from the Joe Biden administration, the great job he has done securing our border. You know, when you have zero illegal immigrants being let loose into the United States, released into the United States, that month after month after month, that is a huge reversal from the Biden days where we had millions coming in and being released. They're still in the country. Many of them are committing crimes, and so repatriating them to their countries of origin is a critical goal, and the president should talk about exactly how we are doing that. Now, people want to protest. We respect the First Amendment, but you can't interfere with the law enforcement agents who are doing their job, whether it's ICE or Border Patrol or anybody else, state or local law enforcement, doing their job to keep our communities safe. And so sending that message is important, but also talking about energy and the way we're moving toward energy independence again, talking about bringing inflation down from near 10% levels down to 2.5%. These are levels that are really helping people to be able to return affordability to our economy. This president, through the trade agreements that he's reaching with countries all around the globe, are helping to make sure that we bring down costs of goods, and making sure that when it comes to foreign affairs, that he is making sure that we keep a safe world for the United States citizens, making sure when it comes to places like Venezuela, like Iran, these countries that are meaning to essentially either do harm to their neighbors or traffic drugs into this country, that this president's not going to stand up for these kinds of actions anymore.
Congressman Ben Cline is from Virginia. He's our guest previewing the State of the Union. We have heard, Congressman Cline, that about 40 Democrats are boycotting the speech tonight. Are you expecting Democrats to pull any other stunts in the hall this evening as the president speaks?
I anticipate those exact kind of antics because they don't have good arguments on the facts. And when you don't have the facts, you stir up controversy. So look for them. I don't know that they'll hold up those silly signs like they did last year because they got mocked so relentlessly on Twitter with, the signs being memed into different things, smiley faces and frowny faces, things like that. But I think you're definitely going to see some antics on the part of the Democrats. They wouldn't be Democrats if they weren't trying to stir up controversy.
This speech tonight, Congressman Cline, comes amid a partial government shutdown. The Department of Homeland Security, at least in part, is shut down right now, and there's been some concern that we're about to start seeing travel problems at the nation's airports involving TSA. We saw this in the government shutdown the Democrats caused at the end of last year. Are you concerned that we are on the brink of travel issues in the country because of this Democrat-led shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security?
I am concerned. The impact on traveling Americans is going to be a problem very soon when TSA, when the FAA, when the flight engineers and the the controllers are going to be off the job. That's going to be a problem for Americans. Now, when it's really going to hit home is when the senators can't travel back and forth to D.C. that's when they actually start negotiating, is when it affects senators of both parties, because all too often you'll see them focus on only the emergency of the moment and not what really needs to get done, like the SAVE Act, for example. We need to get the SAVE Act done. They're focusing on a lot of other issues, but we have to secure our elections. And so my hope is that they will take that up soon. But when it starts to hinder their ability to travel to and from Washington, you'll see a deal pretty quick.
Congressman Ben Cline from Virginia is our guest. Let's talk foreign affairs as we prepare for the speech tonight. The United States military is engaged in a massive buildup in the Middle East, and the president has been talking to Iran, at least through intermediaries. But it does feel like some military action could be on the near-term horizon. How do you feel about that, and how are your constituents going to react if the United States gets engaged here in trying to topple the Iranian regime?
Well, I don't think that the president's goal is for regime change, but I do think the president was very decisive when he went in and struck Iran's nuclear capabilities, and making sure that they aren't able to reconstitute those capabilities is a goal that we all share. So if he needs to step in and strike again, it doesn't mean we're at war with Iran. There's no requirement that Congress step in and declare war, but it does mean that we're taking a decisive action when necessary to make sure that Iran cannot build back these nuclear capabilities to strike either American interests in the near scope or other interests globally. This regime has supported terrorism both in the Middle East and around the world, and we need to make sure that they don't have those capabilities anymore.
Let's talk about the Democratic response to the speech tonight. It will be given by your governor in Virginia, Abigail Spanberger, who in last year's election, we were relentlessly told, Congressman, that she was something of a moderate. This was the new moderate, reasonable Democrat, and the minute she took office in Virginia, it's been one radical action after another. How do you expect her to position herself tonight? Is she going to revert back to this moderate facade? And what do people around the country need to know about the true radical who is Abigail Spanberger?
Well, working with her for the 6 years that she was in the U.S. House with me, we saw that she would talk a good game when it came to sounding moderate, but then voting with Nancy Pelosi or Hakeem Jeffries 100% of the time. Rarely would she take a position that was outside the liberal mainstream. And when she got elected governor after running on that moderate rhetoric, she actually took a step to the left by disengaging our agreement with ICE. The state police had a 287G agreement to remove very, very dangerous illegal immigrants who were in the Commonwealth of Virginia. She actually broke that agreement. And for energy purposes, she actually re-engaged with the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, RGGI, which is a harmful economic impact on the Commonwealth of Virginia, our ability to draw jobs, draw employers to the Commonwealth. So a radical on energy issues, a radical on immigration issues, and then she's been bullied by the Democrats in Richmond into signing on to these redistricting bills. When she would campaign against gerrymandering, she said it was harmful to the process, and yet she's signing whatever the Democrats in Richmond put in front of her, happy to participate in this harmful civic exercise in gerrymandering, which hopefully will be overturned by the courts soon.
Yeah, some of the anti-business rhetoric and anti-business legislation is already having an impact. I read that Virginia is losing Boeing's National Defense Wing. They're moving back to St. Louis. Are you expecting Virginia to suffer more job loss, more people moving out of the state thanks to the Spanberger turn towards anti-growth radical policies?
Absolutely. You know, under Glenn Youngkin's leadership as governor, we had a return to economic resilience. We had people actually moving into the Commonwealth of Virginia. Our population was growing. And the more she strays from these these economic policies, the more likely it is we're going to see that economic downturn, businesses fleeing the Commonwealth, and the cost of living going up and the standard of living going down in the Commonwealth.
Congressman Ben Cline of Virginia, thanks for joining us. We'll see you in the chamber tonight as the president addresses the nation around 9 o'clock for the State of the Union. Appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Scott.
All right, we're going to take a break, but when we come back, I'm going to play some remarks for you. Do you remember Susan Rice, Obama's national security advisor? Well, she's threatening Trump supporters out there. You want to hear this? It's Common Sense for the American People. I'm Scott Jennings, on location today in Saginaw, Michigan. We appreciate you listening. We'll be back right after this. Stay with us.
You've heard the narratives. Now get the truth. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
It is Tuesday, February 24th, broadcasting on location today in Saginaw, Michigan. It's cold in Saginaw, but it'll be warm this November when you join me and my colleague here at Salem, Mike Gallagher, on the unforgettable Gulf of America cruise. November of this year, we'll be sailing in turquoise waters, putting our toes in white sand beaches, eating incredible food, and having insightful conversations about the future of our country. Mike Gallagher and I will dive into all these issues shaping America. As we cruise to all these stunning destinations, we're going to honor the 250th anniversary of our nation. We want you to join us. That's the purpose of it. We want to hear from you. We want to take a trip with you. Text the word cruise to 94878 or visit scottjenningsshow.com and click on the Gulf of America cruise banner. Don't miss out. Get your cabin today. We look forward to seeing you on the Gulf of America cruise in November. Wrapping up this hour here in Saginaw, I want to take a moment to highlight the really absurd comments, absurd and dangerous, I would say, made by Susan Rice this past week. You remember Susan Rice. She was Obama's national security advisor, former UN ambassador. She was one of the most powerful, unelected figures in Washington during the Obama years. Last week, she went on a podcast with a guy named Preet Bharara. He is a former U.S. attorney, Democrat. And she made it clear that any business or law firm or university or really anybody else that has decided to work with the Trump administration instead of against them is going to pay a price if Democrats regain power. She was doing nothing less than promising retribution. Let's listen to a little bit of this from Obama's Susan Rice in cut number 10.
But when it comes to the elites, the corporate interests, the law firms, the universities, the media, I agree with you, Preet. It is not. It's not going to end well for them. For those that decided that it was, that they would act in their perceived very narrow self-interest, which I would underscore is very short-term self-interest, and take a knee to Trump. I think they're now starting to realize, wait a minute, this is not popular. Trump is not popular. What he is doing, whether on the economy and affordability or on immigration now, is not popular. And that there is likely to be a swing in the other direction. And they are going to be caught with more than their pants down. They're going to be held accountable by those who come in opposition to Trump and win at the ballot box. And I can tell you, Preet, as I talk to leaders in Washington, leaders in our party, leaders in the states, if these corporations think that the Democrats, when they come back in power, are going to, play by the old rules, and say, oh, never mind, we'll forgive you for all the people you've fired, all the policies and principles you've violated, all, the laws you've skirted. I think they've got another thing coming.
So this is Susan Rice, and Democrats listen to Susan Rice, by the way, admitting that her party is not interested in following any rules if they come back into power, and she is saying out loud they plan to target those that they disagree with politically. When people who have held immense power in this country start talking like this, when they sound desperate, when they sound unhinged, when they sound like They want to punish their fellow Americans. It tells you something deeper is going on out there. It's retribution for their enemies. This has become the norm for the Democratic Party. She's hardly the only Democrat who's out talking about retribution right now, but she is one of the most powerful. She is an advisor to powerful Democrats. They do listen to her. She's part of this class of permanent Washington power brokers who never expect to lose their grip. They never expect to be challenged. They never expect to be questioned. And when things happen, like, say, Donald Trump coming back into the White House, they lose their marbles. They freak out. And their reaction to all of it is quite dramatic. They want to go after you. They want to go after anyone who has said, okay, we have a new administration. I need to work with this administration. It's reasonable to say that if you're a corporation or an institution. But for people and institutions that have done that, they now have a target on their back placed there by Susan Rice and others who believe in punishing you for political differences. Another hour of the Scott Jennings Show is ahead. It's Common Sense for the American People. On location today, Saginaw, Michigan. We'll take a break and be back after this. Stay with us.
The voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
It is Tuesday, February 24th. Scott Jennings broadcasting to you live today from Saginaw, Michigan. I've been dispatched here by CNN to cover the President's State of the Union speech tonight. My colleague Van Jones and I will be here in Saginaw watching the speech with a group of voters and talking with them and then broadcasting about how they're feeling about the state of our union and about the President's speech tonight. So you'll want to check that out on CNN. We're glad to be here. Great hospitality here in Saginaw and a wonderful location for broadcasting the show today. Quick check of the headlines. Secretary of State Marco Rubio briefing top lawmakers today at 3 o'clock on the issue of Iran. This is the so-called Gang of Eight, the leadership and the head of the intelligence committees. The briefing is being held virtually. It does include people from the House and the Senate. Rubio has delayed a trip to Israel from Saturday until Monday, and the United States continues its military buildup in the Middle East. The director of the CIA, John Ratcliffe, will join Secretary Rubio for the briefing today. A judge has declined to dismiss the prosecutors from the case against alleged Charlie Kirk shooter Tyler Robinson. This just in. Robinson's defense attorneys had asked for the entire Utah County Attorney's Office to be recused from the case, arguing that the presence of a lead prosecutor's child at the Charlie Kirk event where he was assassinated had tainted the prosecution, but the judge disagreed, and the prosecutors will remain. Latest on Nancy Guthrie. Her daughter, Savannah Guthrie, is now offering a $1 million reward for, quote, any information that would lead to the recovery of her mother, Nancy. Still no real new information from police out in Arizona. And tonight, the president touts his economic agenda and celebrates the nation's 250th anniversary in his State of the Union speech, which begins around 9 o'clock. We kick off our second hour with someone who will be in the room. Our friend, Congressman Buddy Carter of Georgia, is here. He chairs the Energy and Commerce Subcommittee on Health. Buddy Carter, welcome back to the Scott Jennings Show.
For having me. Always a pleasure to talk to you, my friend.
Yeah, thanks, Buddy. And we should mention that Buddy is running for the United States Senate. He's in the Republican primary there in Georgia. The incumbent is Democrat Jon Ossoff. Congressman Carter, you'll be in the room tonight, and you have a particular focus on health care in your work in Congress. What do you want to hear from the president on that particular vector tonight as he speaks to the nation?
Well, first of all, the president and this administration, we've been very successful in bringing down drug prices, and that is important. This administration, unlike any other, even his first administration, we've done more in 1 year in the way of prescription drug prices than we've ever done. We just had the PBM reform that was part of the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2026 when we passed the last bills that unfortunately DHS, as you know, was not covered in that. But it does call for reform to PBMs. PBMs are pharmacy benefit managers. They're the middleman. And that is something that has been very important to me. You know, when I first came up here 12 years ago, I said as my mission to do something about prescription drug prices. As a practicing pharmacist, I'm the one who had to go to the counter and tell the senior citizen how much their prescription was and watch them make a decision between buying their drugs and buying their groceries. I'm the one who had to go tell the mother how much her child's antibiotic was and watch her in tears as she tried to pay for that antibiotic and figure out how she was going to pay for it. I set as my goal to do something about that. Fortunately, we have been successful, and we got this reform in. Not only that, but it was other reform for health care as well. Telehealth, which is extremely important, particularly in the rural areas. We were able to get that passed. We were also able to address maternal mortality, which is a big problem, again, particularly in our rural areas, and that is something that we're very proud of.
Congressman Buddy Carter of Georgia is our guest. He'll be in the room tonight when the president addresses the nation in the State of the Union. Let's talk a little about immigration, Congressman Carter. You have pushed recently for a surge of ICE agents to come to Georgia after a special education teacher was killed by an illegal immigrant fleeing a federal traffic stop. Maybe tell us more about that story and tell us about what's going on with getting more ICE agents into Georgia to deal with illegal immigrants.
Well, I have called for more ICE agents because I support ICE. And, you know, these guys are patriots. They're out there doing their job. We're trying to get rid of the criminal, illegal immigrants who are in this country. We had a tragedy in my hometown of Savannah, Georgia, where one of our beloved teachers, Linda Davis, was killed by an illegal immigrant who was fleeing, who was resisting arrest, traffic accident, and it was just horrible. But these Democrats really do have blood on their hands now as a result of this. After all, the rhetoric is so bad right now. They're encouraging people not to cooperate with ICE, to resist ICE. That kind of rhetoric is what led to this disaster, to this tragedy, and that is taking the life of one of our dear members of our community, an educator. And that's got to stop. You know, we teach our children that words matter and that actions have consequences. Well, the words that the Democrats are using right now and encouraging people, again, to resist and not to cooperate with ICE, that's what's resulting in the problems that we're having right now.
Yeah, it's a strange situation out there. I think, Congressman, your words are true. We're seeing a lot of people who have essentially transformed themselves into political vigilantes. I had a story on the show today, in fact, about a woman in Idaho who stole an ambulance and drove it into an office building where she thought DHS was working to try to burn it down. And you have people taking these sorts of crazy actions all over the country. And so I think you're right about the anti-ICE rhetoric, and it's gotten out of hand. Talk about foreign policy a little bit. I reported a few minutes ago that Marco Rubio is briefing the Gang of Eight today on the military buildup in Iran. Do you want to hear the president make the case for war against Iran tonight? Is that something he should do?
Well, hopefully we don't get to that point, but yes, I do. You know, Iran needs to come to the table. They need to negotiate. They need to understand that this is a president who says what he means and means what he says. And he is not kidding. He's not bluffing here. He is going to cause and inflict pain on them if they don't cooperate. They need to make sure that they come to the negotiating table and that they cooperate with us in the nuclear negotiations. They need to stop funding terrorism. They need to stop killing their protesters. All of these things need to stop, and we need to get Iran's attention. You know, it's interesting to me, Scott, that this is really not the Iranian people. This is just the leaders, the Ayatollahs. They are the ones who are causing the problem. The Iranian people don't want this. They want this to stop. They hope America is successful in stopping the Ayatollahs.
Congressman, we've got about a minute here. I want to give you a chance to talk to people about the race for U.S. Senate in Georgia. Make the case. What makes Buddy Carter the best Republican to take on Jon Ossoff this fall in what should be one of the most targeted races in the country?
And it will be, and we need a change. We need someone who represents Georgia values. I'm a lifelong Georgian, and I represent Georgia values. Why am I the one to to help President Trump deliver his America First policies in the Senate, because I've been doing it. I've been doing it in the House. I did it through his first administration. I've done it this last year. We'll continue to do it over in the Senate. Right now, John Ossoff represents more of the California, New York, and Illinois values than he does of Georgia values. That is not something we need. We need someone who is going to support ICE, who is going to support DHS, who is going to support. I'm blessed to have 6 granddaughters, and I do not want them competing against a biological male in athletics. I do not want a biological male in their locker room. And yet John Ossoff, he has voted against prohibiting that. He voted 14 times using our WIC, our SNAP beneficiaries, our troops as leverage in order to try to get health care benefits for illegal immigrants. That is not Georgia values. We need someone who is going to represent Georgia and Georgia values, who's going to support President Trump and his America First policies in the Senate.
That's Congressman Buddy Carter of Georgia. He's on the Energy and Commerce Committee and deals a lot with health care policy. He's a practicing pharmacist and also candidate for the United States Senate. Congressman Carter, thanks for joining us on the show today.
Thank you, Scott. Always a pleasure.
All right, buddy. Appreciate your time. Let's share a listener's story before we take a break with a man named Rod in Texas. Rod says, quote, "I'm 64 years old. I used to build houses on the side. Years of hard physical work left me with excruciating back pain, and it became unbearable. Rod finally gave Relief Factor a try, and within 4 days, Rod says most of the pain subsided. Over the next few weeks, it continued to improve. Rod's words are simple, quote, being pain-free is indescribable. Now, I have to tell you, we've been using Relief Factor in the Jennings household. I've used it. My father is a walking testimonial for Relief Factor. Down in Florida right now, playing golf, enjoying his retirement years pain-free. He is an adherent to Relief Factor. Maybe you will be as well if you do the Relief Factor 3-week quick start. See how it works for you. Call 1-800-4RELIEF or go to relieffactor.com. Ask yourself, how would it feel to be out of pain? When we come back, Agnes Gibney joins us. She's one of the angel moms who was with the president at the White House this week. A great conversation ahead. Stay with us.
Ready for more common sense? Here's CNN's senior political commentator, New York Times best-selling author, and America's favorite political pundit, Scott Jennings.
It is Tuesday, February 24th. We await the president's speech tonight. The State of the Union is at 9 o'clock Eastern this evening, and we are sure to hear quite a bit of talk from the president about all of his success in dealing with the immigration crisis in our country. We saw this firsthand yesterday at the White House when President Trump hosted a number of angel families. If you're unfamiliar with that term, angel families are those who have lost a loved one to illegal immigrant crime. And yesterday, President Trump signed a proclamation designating February 22nd as National Angel Family Day. These stories are tragic, and joining us now on the show is Agnes Gibney, who unfortunately knows this pain all too well. She herself is an angel mom. She was in attendance yesterday as President Trump highlighted these families. Agnes, I'm so grateful for your time today. Welcome to the show. Why don't you take a moment, tell us your story, and tell us what it was like to be at the White House with President Trump yesterday.
Sure. Thank you for having me. Yes, my story is my son, firstborn and only son, was shot and killed by a previously deported criminal illegal alien because our borders are open. And yesterday I had the honor and the privilege to be at the White House when President signed the Angel Families Remembrance Day, which will be every year March 22nd. And I'm honored that all of our loved ones who have been killed by illegal aliens will be remembered that day nationally.
What was it like to be with the president yesterday? You know, often, Agnes, we discuss these things as macro policy issues, but for you and for the other angel families, it's all too personal and it's all too real. What was it like to talk to the president about your story? What did you experience with him in your conversations?
Well, most of us didn't have, none of us actually had a conversation with him because we had the event and then had the candlelight event. If anybody saw, it was an extremely beautiful candlelight event where they showed the pictures of our loved ones and announced their names. And but President Trump has always been supporter of angel moms. He always had our back. He is actually the only president who ever cared about angel families like me, and cared about the victims of illegal alien crime. And I also got to say that Tom Homan and our beautiful Secretary Kristi Noem is doing an absolutely fabulous job deporting criminals. We do not need more criminals in our country, and she's doing a fabulous job. Because if we think back to 4 years ago, Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas did absolutely nothing to prevent more criminals from coming into our country, and much less deport criminals. And Kristi Noem is taking on the job that a man couldn't do, but this woman is doing it. Thank God for her. God bless her.
It was a beautiful ceremony, somber but beautiful at the White House. Let's hear a little bit of that. This is President Trump in cut number 3.
We're willing to tell the story, and that I don't know why the news doesn't want to hear it. The Democrats don't want to hear it. The radical left, they don't want to hear it. What's not to hear? We want to stop murderers and criminals from coming into our country. I watched the mayor of Minneapolis. I watch these people saying, we want to protect murderers. I don't get it. Something sick. They're sick. Can't have a country like that. So we appreciate the bravery of everybody in this room, actually.
Agnes, when you hear certain people in our politics today say that we need to abolish ICE or that we don't need to take seriously deporting these criminal illegal aliens, for someone who has experienced the pain of losing your own son, what goes through your mind when you hear these politicians?
I am actually very outraged that a politician who's supposed to be representing Americans in this country is siding with criminals that belong in other countries. And I am very disappointed. They need to all retake their oath of allegiance to this country, because they forgot that little clause that says, I swear to defend my country against foreign and domestic invaders. And they're not doing that. And I wish we had something in our Constitution that would automatically disqualify these politicians as treasonous and remove them from office, because we are being destroyed from inside, from within, as well as from the outside. If we cannot protect our own, how strong can we be? Yeah. And President Trump has done so much already. God bless. I wish we could clone him.
Well, these are powerful words from Agnes Giboney. She's an angel mom. Her son, Ronald, was 29 years old when an illegal alien killed him in April of 2002. She was with the president yesterday at the White House as he honored these angel families. Agnes, we really appreciate your time on the Scott Jennings Show today. We're going to take a break. We'll have more right after this. It's Common Sense for the American people. Stay with us.
Quelling leftist arguments with truth and common sense. They hate that. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
It is Tuesday, February 24th, and in Washington, D.C., all the members of Congress and the rest of Washington are awaiting the President of the United States. He'll give the State of the Union address this evening around 9 o'clock Eastern Time. Now, I'm broadcasting the show today from Saginaw, Michigan. I've been dispatched here by CNN for State of the Union coverage tonight. My colleague Van Jones and I will be watching the speech with a group of voters here in Saginaw, and we're going to talk about those conversations on the air tonight on CNN. So we'll look forward to both hearing what the president has to say and hearing what the voters here in Michigan have to say as well. We look forward to your tuning in for that. To continue to preview the president's speech, we go back to Capitol Hill for another live interview. We have Congressman Craig Goldman, representing Texas 12. Joining us, Congressman Goldman, thank you for hopping on for your inaugural appearance on the Scott Jennings Show. We're glad to have you.
Thanks for having me, Scott. Look forward to our conversation. And something tells me it's a little colder in Michigan than it is in D.C. today.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, we of all the places we could have picked to do this broadcast, we picked Saginaw, Michigan, up here in the in the dead of winter. But we're enjoying our time up here, and wonderful place, great hospitality here in Saginaw. Let's talk a little about the president's speech, some of the issues at play, and something you have going on. In fact, we haven't really touched on this, but I think we need to, given your proclivities. You're on the House Energy and Commerce Committee. You deal a lot with energy topics, and you've got a piece of legislation on the floor tomorrow called the Homeowner Energy Freedom Act. I want to hear about this legislation, and also I'd love to get your thoughts on what the president should tell the nation tonight about our national energy policy.
Well, great. I'd love to do that. Thank you. And yes, tomorrow the House will be voting on my bill, the Homeowner Energy Freedom Act. And basically what it does is it repeals yet another horrific Biden regulation where the U.S. government mandated green energy policy on home appliances. Now, you may think that that's, kind of funny, but it's not funny to the cost of $31,000 on average for an everyday American to buy a new home with the mandates on appliances and water heaters, stoves, ovens, mandate that those appliances be green energy, and it's just a joke. It's yet another piece of regulation the Biden administration put in effect that I'm working hard to deregulate, to repeal those ridiculous, stupid laws that they passed in previous Congresses.
There were a lot of. Well, let me ask you about the bill, because I know you're excited about it, and it seemed like during the Biden years there was just one regulation, one law, one idea after another, all in pursuit of this climate agenda, but no thought was ever given to the cost to the average person, the average working family out there that has to live with all these regulations. It added up over 4 years. You're taking action against it. Have you had any Democrats at all in the House working with you on this, or has this been fully a project warehouse within the Republican Party?
Well, it's pretty much been within the Republican Party. Again, it went through my committee, the Energy and Commerce Committee, and but I passed a bill last year, and actually, I call it a bipartisan vote. I think 3 or 4 Democrats voted for it. That was to repeal another horrific Biden regulation on commercial refrigerators. And again, it sounds silly, but it's not when the cost of commercial refrigerators was going to rise tremendously, and who at the end of the day was going to pay the increase in those costs was going to be the American taxpayer as you went into a restaurant or you had catering, and these commercial refrigerator owners or the buyers of the new ones will be forced to pay higher prices. They don't just pay the higher price and eat it themselves. They pass it on to the consumer. So with the Homeowner Energy Freedom Act that we're going to have on the floor tomorrow, I expect Democrats to actually vote for the bill. Some of them, not all of them.
Yeah, it would be common sense to do so. Seems to be a little bit lacking in their party right now, but hopefully you'll get a bipartisan achievement. Let's shift gears to tonight's speech. What should the president tell the nation about energy policy tonight, both what he has done and what still needs to be done about our energy needs in this country?
Well, I just left the floor, Scott, and we, kind of the somewhat of a joke around the floor is whether or not this president's going to speak for 1 hour or 2 hours or even 3 hours. He certainly has a lot of accomplishments to speak about. Energy specific, I can tell you as a Texan, it's been a game changer having Donald Trump in the White House versus Joe Biden. It's been a game changer having Chris Wright, the Secretary of Energy, versus the last Secretary of Energy, who literally, she spoke against the very industry she oversaw. We have an incredible friendly administration towards energy policy to where regulations are down, permits are up, and gas prices, as a result, are down. Lo and behold, can you believe that? I mean, look where we were a year and a half ago with gas prices, something as simple as paying at the pump, to where we were in the Biden's last years compared to where we are 1 year in the Trump administration. Gas prices across the nation, Americans are paying less than what they paid for a year and a half ago.
Yeah, gas prices definitely down, and we are producing more energy here. Of course, we need more energy, and with some of the winter weather that we've had around the country this weekend, in fact, is happening right now in the Northeast, and in recent weeks, people have become acutely aware of the kinds of energy that you need to power the grid. Talk to us a little bit about all of our energy demands and sort of the kinds of energy that we have to have. I think what we've learned lately, Congressman, is that fossil fuels still work, and that's what we need to make sure we have the lights on and the heaters on when the winter weather comes.
No question, and I'm sorry for my friends in the Northeast who are paying more because of the horrific blue state policies and the Biden regulation policies that have blocked the kind of new production of energy up in the Northeast, and saying no to new pipelines being put in the ground to carry something as simple as natural gas. So they're burning oil. They're burning oil instead of burning natural gas, which is, one, cleaner and cheaper. But because of the regulations they put in, so we need all hands on deck. We need natural gas. We need certainly need more nuclear. I think the bottom line is, the one good news out of the Energy and Commerce Committee is we've had many hearings in the last year, and we're all in agreement that nuclear energy needs to come online as quickly as possible. The small modular reactors work, and that is truly the future of the United States power, is getting those online as quickly as possible. And we have an administration, thankfully, that is in agreement with us, and instead of an administration in the Biden administration that worked against that very thing. But the more we get online, the cheaper it'll be for the rest of Americans to pay for the energy prices.
Congressman, how are you feeling, and what are you hearing from your constituents about these AI data centers? I've seen some polling in the last couple of days. People seem to be skeptical. They're worried about the amount of power the AI data centers are using. We've heard the president talk about the need to produce more power so that we can control the AI data centers, so we can beat China in this race to controlling artificial intelligence. What are you hearing? How are you feeling about how this issue is unfolding? What should people know about it?
Well, to your point, one, we have to win the AI game. There's no question about that. And we have to beat China at it. And that's our toughest and closest competitor. So we are, with the Trump administration's backing, we are moving full speed ahead to make sure that we do anything and everything we can to win the AI game. Now, what does that look like? To your point, the data centers. We are building a bunch of them in Texas. We're building some of the biggest of them in Texas, but they're also going in all over the country. They do take a lot of power. They also take a lot of water. So where they are going, I think every single local entity, if you will, has to make sure there's certainly enough power and enough water to supply for those data centers. The good news is that, in states like Texas, I hate to keep referring to that, but, we're doing it right. And other states that are putting them in know what the capabilities are and what the needs are, and they're going to do them right, because you have to have the power and you have to have the water to be there for these data centers. But they're the future, and there's no turning back. We can't stop building them. We can't not build them, because we have to win the AI game.
Congressman Craig Goldman represents Texas' 12th Congressional District. He's our conversation, previewing the President's State of the Union tonight. Of course, the President, Congressman, is speaking at a time when the government is partially shut down. The Department of Homeland Security is somewhat shut down. You represent an area near Dallas. The Dallas-Fort Worth DFW Airport is one of the busiest airports in America. Are you concerned that this Democrat-led shutdown is going to begin to impact air travel for regular people in the next few days?
Well, I certainly hope not. Am I concerned? Yes. Do I hope that it happens? No. Is this a political game by the Senate Democrats? Absolutely. It's ridiculous. The members of the TSA and other people that are not receiving paychecks are pawns in the Democrat Senate game that they're playing, which they're going to lose. They're not going to win anything out of this. And it's just ridiculous that Chuck Schumer is leading this, is using our TSA agents and our hardworking men and women who get funded by Homeland Security. They're really just being used as pawns in Chuck Schumer's game, and it's just ridiculous. You know, no one wants these type of side games going on when they're there to work on behalf of the American people.
Congressman, last question. How much should the president lean in on the immigration issue tonight? Would you say this is one of his best accomplishments of his first year plus in office?
Look, let me be very clear. I come from Texas, and one of the greatest problems we had in Texas during the Biden administration were the open, porous borders. I was a member of the Texas State Legislature, where I voted to spend over $15 billion of our state funds to send DPS troopers down to the border, to buy drones, to buy boats, to buy buoys. We were doing the job of the federal government. Completely unfair. But the Biden administration failed to do it. Hundreds of thousands of people crossing our borders illegally, and Donald Trump and the Republican-led Congress put a stop to it. No illegal crossings over those borders in the last several months. So immigration is a huge issue. Illegal immigration is a huge issue in the state of Texas and the United States, and Donald Trump and his administration put an end to it.
That is Congressman Craig Goldman. He represents the Texas 12th Congressional District near Dallas, Texas. Congressman, thanks for your time, and we'll look for your reaction after the president's speech tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott, very much. I'll leave you a little teaser. Watch and wait for the Olympic hockey team to be talked about by the president, and watch what happens. There's a teaser for you. It's going to be pretty exciting.
Well, if they make an appearance, I know the American people will be thrilled with it. They're our heroes right now. Thanks a lot, Congressman. A quick word from our... Yeah, you got it. Yeah, we're looking forward to it. A word from our friends at Patriot Mobile. It is our nation's 250th year. The direction of our country is being decided right now. And who we choose to support in our consumer choices matters more than ever. Most wireless companies don't support your values, but I can tell you one that does, Patriot Mobile. You don't have to give up quality. You don't have to give up service when you switch to Patriot Mobile. They'll give you premium quality, unlimited data, text. They have hotspots. They have everything you need to get quality cell phone service, and also you're supporting a company that supports your values. Go to patriotmobile.com/Scott or call 972-PATRIOT. Use promo code Scott for a free month. patriotmobile.com/Scott or 972-PATRIOT. Make the switch today. When we come back, my closing thoughts on the President's State of the Union here on Common Sense for the American people. Stay with us.
When he's not in the Oval Office or owning the libs on CNN, he's here with us. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
Home stretch here on Tuesday, February 24th, and broadcasting on location from Saginaw, Michigan. Thank you all for listening today as we preview the President's State of the Union speech tonight. Little breaking news into the show. I'm looking at a photo just into the show. Team USA hockey on the south lawn of the White House. I see the guys. I see the gold medals getting their picture made at the White House. Seems they'll talk to the president before they head up to the Capitol this evening to be in attendance for the president's speech. I'm sure there'll be big heroes in the halls. Well, there'll be heroes, at least among the Republicans. I think some of the libs... We're having trouble with all this. Based on my social media feed, some of the libs having real trouble celebrating Team USA during the Olympics this year. So the president is going to give the State of the Union tonight. Always a big question. What should the president say? How much should you look back? How much should you look forward? What is the impact of a speech like this? I wouldn't frankly expect the president's poll numbers to change all that much. The State of the Union rarely changes permanently a president's poll numbers. You might see a temporary increase. So I wouldn't read too much into the polling that you see tonight or in the next few days. It just tends not to have a lasting impact. But of course, the president is the number one messenger of the Republican Party, and so tonight's speech is, I assume, going to be somewhat a template for other Republicans and how they talk about the state of the country out there. What is the state of our union right now? Well, let's see. The border is closed, and that was a huge issue. And it's perhaps the president's number one accomplishment. We are in a period of growth. Gross domestic product is good. We are in a situation where inflation has been controlled. Inflation under Biden hit 9.1%. It was the fastest price growth since the Carter years. Under Trump, inflation is down near 2% and falling. I think when the president says, and he's likely to say tonight, we have tamed the Biden inflation crisis, he is absolutely right and underpinned by the data. What's the status of our military? We have a strong military that has performed admirably around the world and is now amassing in the Middle East. We have deregulation that's working for the American people. We have the smallest federal government since 1966. There's a whole lot that's gone on in the last year that is going right for Donald Trump. Now, he faces relentless lying and propaganda and negativity about his administration, but there's a whole lot of things that are actually going in the president's direction. A lot of promises were made. A lot of promises have been kept. We've seen a lot of change for the better in this country. Immigration has been swiftly dealt with. The deportations are happening of some of the most heinous criminals in our society. On foreign policy, we're respected again. People don't laugh at the United States anymore the way they did when Joe Biden was the president. We have peace in many places in the world, thanks to the president's engagement on these issues. We have new trade deals with a lot of countries, rebalancing the international scales. As I mentioned, real GDP grew over 2% in 2025. Inflation down, consumer confidence moving up, industrial manufacturing on the rise, retail sales exceeding expectations. In the big, beautiful bill, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. We have record tax refunds coming back to the American people as we speak during this tax season. A lot of things are going right for Donald Trump, but he does have to acknowledge to the American people, I know how much pain you were in. I know why you were in that pain. It was thanks to the policies of the Biden administration. I know how deep the hole is, and I am working feverishly to get us out of it. I'm building a ladder as fast as I can. That's really the message the president's going to have to deliver this evening. The speech is at 9 o'clock. We'll be watching here from Saginaw, talking with voters about it, and we'll look forward to discussing the aftermath on the show tomorrow. I'll be back in Washington for that. I've got a number of United States senators coming on the show tomorrow for their reactions. As we close out today, I did want to put in another reminder about the cruise we're taking in November 2026. Mike Gallagher and I taking a cruise. If you want to book your cabin, do it now. Text the word cruise to 94878 or visit scottjenningsshow.com and click on the Gulf of America cruise banner. It's the State of the Union tonight. We react tomorrow. Thank you for listening. Live from Saginaw, it's Common Sense for the American people. We'll see you tomorrow.
Common sense for the American people. This is the Scott Jennings